For most of the 20th century, the most desirable road car in the world was built by a man who did not want to build road cars. In 1947, Enzo Ferrari produced his first road-legal automobile under financial duress, not vision. By 1960, the Ferrari name was synonymous with wealth, speed, and desire across 6 continents. Enzo Ferrari found this embarrassing. He was not a car manufacturer. He was a racing constructor who built road cars to fund a racing operation he cared about completely and a road car business he cared about almost not at all. His name went on the cars. His attention went elsewhere. The road car was never the point. What the point actually was, untold, and what it cost him, is a story the cars themselves cannot tell. Enzo Anselmo Ferrari was born on February 18, 1898, in Modena, Italy. His father, Alfredo, ran a small metal fabrication workshop, a man who worked with his hands and understood machines as practical objects, not aesthetic ones. Enzo grew up inside that understanding. In 1908, his father took him to watch a race on the road circuit outside Bologna. A dirt road, summer heat, a crowd pressing against the edge of the track. A racing car came through. The machine was close enough that the air it displaced pushed against Enzo's face and chest. He did not think about the driver. He thought about what the engine was doing at that speed. The specific pitch of it, unlike any mechanical sound he had heard in his father's workshop. The car passed in under 2 seconds. The dust it raised from the unpaved surface took 30 seconds to settle. He watched it settle. He was 10 years old. He knew, standing there, that he would spend his life near machines that made that sound. The First World War interrupted everything. Enzo was conscripted in 1916 and assigned to a mountain artillery regiment in northern Italy. His father died that year. His brother died in 1917. He contracted influenza during the 1918 pandemic and spent weeks in a military hospital. He returned to Modena with no family, no business, and no clear path. In 1919, he applied to Fiat as a test driver. Fiat declined. He found work with a small Turin manufacturer called CMN, testing and racing their cars. He was competent. He was not exceptional. The gap between those two things was the most important fact about Enzo Ferrari's career as a racing driver. He had tried to be a racing driver. The circuit had a different assessment. So Enzo Ferrari became something more dangerous, the man who decided what the drivers drove. By 1920, he had moved to Alfa Romeo as a works driver. He won his first significant race at the 1923 Circuito del Savio, a road race in Ravenna, against competitive opposition. Alfa Romeo continued his contract, but Enzo's real value to the organization was not his lap times. It was his ability to understand what a car was doing wrong and communicate it precisely to the engineers who could fix it. His feedback was systematic. His observations were technical, not impressionistic. He understood the machine more completely than almost any driver of his era. In 1929, he formalized that understanding. He founded Scuderia Ferrari in Modena, not a car manufacturing company, but a racing team. Its purpose was to manage and campaign Alfa Romeo cars for private clients. Enzo was the constructor, the team manager, the operational intelligence behind the enterprise. He was not building cars. He was building a structure around the fastest cars in the world. This was what he was. This was what he intended to remain. The road car was never the point. In 1929, that was still a fact with no consequences. Between 1929 and 1938, Scuderia Ferrari became the dominant racing operation in Italy. Enzo managed drivers, logistics, and car development with a precision that Alfa Romeo's own factory team could not consistently match. The results were real. The reputation was earned. Alfa Romeo responded by absorbing the operation directly in 1938, making Enzo head of Alfa Corse, the factory racing division. He lasted 2 years. A professional conflict with Alfa Romeo's technical director ended his employment in 1939. The terms of his departure included a clause prohibiting him from using the Ferrari name in motorsport for 4 years. He signed it. He had no choice. But he did not stop building. He founded Autoavio Costruzioni in Modena, nominally a machine tool manufacturer, actually the only form of racing operation he was contractually permitted to run. He produced 2 cars for the 1940 Mille Miglia under the AAC name. The contract prevented Ferrari. The engineering continued. Then, the war stopped everything. Allied bombing struck the Modena area in 1944. Enzo relocated to Maranello, 12 kilometers south. The factory there was bombed twice. It was rebuilt twice. By 1945, the prohibition had expired, and the war was over. In 1947, Enzo Ferrari produced the 125S, the first car to carry his name on a public road. The decision was not visionary, it was financial. Racing programs required capital. Without Alfa Romeo's institutional backing, the only viable path to sustaining the racing was to sell something to people with money. Road cars were what those people would buy. The completed 125S sat on the Maranello factory floor under the workshop lights. Enzo walked the full length of it with his hands behind his back, not touching it. The car was painted red, not for romance, not for brand identity, but because Italian racing entries ran red under International Motorsport Convention, a racing color on a road car. He set the sequence in his mind. This machine goes to a customer, the money funds something faster, and walked back to his office. The 125S sold. The cars that followed sold better. Road car revenue funded the racing. The structure that would define Ferrari for the next 4 decades was built not from ambition, but from a single reluctant transaction, repeated until it became a business. The road car was never the point, but without it, there was no racing, and without the racing, there was no Enzo Ferrari. Road car revenue solved the immediate funding problem, but it created a dependency that would eventually produce a confrontation Enzo had not planned for. Through the 1950s, Ferrari road cars found a global clientele. Wealthy Americans bought them. European aristocracy bought them. Film industry figures bought them. The cars were fast, mechanically demanding, expensive to maintain, and nearly impossible to service outside Italy. Enzo did not consider any of these characteristics flaws. His relationship with his customers was a matter of public record. He referred to them as clienti, in a tone that conveyed obligation rather than gratitude. He said, in terms he did not soften for publication, that he sold road cars to fund his racing, and he assumed his customers understood that arrangement. Some of them did not. He did not adjust the arrangement. A sales confirmation for a Ferrari road car delivered to an American client sat on his desk in 1957. He set it aside without reading the client's name. Across the desk from it was a timing sheet from the most recent test session at Maranello. Lap times, sector splits, a handwritten note from the test driver about understeer at the second apex. He read the timing sheet first. He read it twice. In 1957, a Ferrari crashed during the Mille Miglia and killed the driver and 11 spectators. The race was canceled permanently. Enzo absorbed the legal exposure and the public criticism without visible collapse. But the Mille Miglia had defined Italian motorsport since before Scuderia Ferrari existed. Its end was a loss no financial or reputational consequence could measure. He built more cars. Then 1963 arrived, and with it, Henry Ford II. Ford's approach was direct. The terms were financially significant: an acquisition offer covering the road car operation, the name, the manufacturing infrastructure, with the racing program continuing under Ford financial backing. For a company that had spent 16 years funding racing through road car sales, the offer represented a structural solution to the dependency Enzo had been managing since 1947. He entered negotiations. He read the contract. His office at Maranello, a sparse room, a single desk, racing photographs on 3 walls, no road car imagery anywhere in the space. He found the clause covering racing budget approval. Under Ford's terms, race entries and competition expenditure would require Ford Motor Company authorization. He set the document face down on the desk. He did not call his lawyer first. He called his racing director. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. He terminated the negotiations the same afternoon. Henry Ford II had offered him more money than the Maranello factory was worth. Enzo Ferrari said no, and explained why in a single sentence he hadn't agreed to let Ford decide which races he entered. Ford's response was the GT40 program, a corporate engineering effort designed specifically to beat Ferrari at Le Mans. The confrontation ran from 1964 to 1966. Ford won Le Mans in 1966 with a 1-2-3 finish. Ferrari finished behind them. In 1969, Enzo sold 50% of Ferrari to Fiat, not to Ford, not to an American company, to an Italian one, on terms that preserved his operational authority over the racing program. The road car business passed increasingly to Fiat's management. The racing stayed with Enzo. With Fiat holding half the company, one question had no clean answer. How long could racing remain the priority against the road car commercial logic that a company the size of Fiat understood far better than Enzo ever chose to? Enzo Ferrari did not attend races after the early 1970s. The travel had become difficult. His eyesight was failing. Yet the racing continued, and he directed it from Maranello, by telephone, by timing sheet, by the same systematic analysis he had applied since the days of Scuderia Ferrari in 1929. The physical distance from the circuit changed nothing about the quality of his attention to it. His son Alfredo, Dino, the name everyone used, had died in 1956 at 24 years old from muscular dystrophy. Enzo had intended him as his successor. The loss removed the one person for whom the company's continuity had a meaning beyond the racing itself. Enzo named an engine after him. He did not discuss the loss in terms others could easily reach. He built cars. Through the late 1970s and into the 1980s, the road car business expanded beyond the scale he had originally designed. Fiat's institutional resources had professionalized what Enzo had run on instinct and obsession. Ferrari road cars were global luxury objects, objects of desire whose connection to actual racing performance was, in many configurations, largely symbolic. Enzo was aware of this. He did not pretend otherwise. He monitored the Formula One timing sheets. His office at Maranello, 1985, the same room, the same desk, the same racing photographs, 30 years older, the photographs more numerous, the desk more worn. A timing sheet arrived by fax. The paper was still warm from the machine. He ran his finger down the column of lap times and stopped at a number that did not match what the car's current setup should produce. The gap was small, less than 0.2 of a second per lap. But 0.2 per lap across a race distance is a result, not a fluctuation. He did not know if he would be alive when the problem that number indicated was finally solved. He wrote a note to the technical director anyway. He folded the timing sheet in half and placed it in the left drawer of the desk, where he kept all timing sheets he intended to discuss in the morning. Everything he had built since 1929 came down to that note. The racing still had to be right. It always had. In 1988, Fiat completed full acquisition of Ferrari. The legal structure Enzo had maintained since 1969, his controlling interest in the racing operation, dissolved into the larger institution. He was 89 years old. He did not resist it at this stage. Enzo Ferrari died on August 14, 1988 in Maranello. He was 90 years old. His death was not announced for 2 days. The team had a race that weekend. Enzo Ferrari would have considered that the correct priority. Ferrari SPA today operates across more than 60 countries. Annual revenues exceed $5 billion. The company has won more Formula One Constructors' Championships than any other constructor in history. Its road cars carry waiting lists measured in years and prices measured in millions. The brand ranks by multiple global indices among the most powerful in the world. The man who built it spent his entire life insisting the road cars were a means, not an end. He sold them to fund racing. He tolerated the customers who bought them. He rejected the largest acquisition offer of his era because the fine print would have given someone else authority over his race entries. Every decision across 70 years pointed in the same direction. The road car was never the point. It had funded everything. It had outlasted everything. It had become, in the world's judgment, the entire point. Enzo Ferrari had spent 90 years knowing otherwise. The road car was never the point.